Picture standing deep inside a cave, the air cool and heavy with the scent of damp stone. The flickering light of your torch dances across the walls, revealing images painted tens of thousands of years ago, vivid herds of stampeding bison, hunters with spears raised, strange symbols etched into the rock. At first glance, these might seem like simple records of daily life or sacred rituals. But what if there's something far more mysterious? What if these ancient masterpieces aren't just art but a coded language, a series of hidden messages left behind by our ancestors for reasons we're only beginning to understand? Archaeologists and historians have spent decades staring at these paintings, piecing together clues that suggest these images hold secrets far beyond what meets the eye. Some believe they could be maps, star charts, or even encrypted warnings. Others think they might tell stories we've forgotten or contain wisdom meant to survive the ages. Today, we're diving into 25 of the most puzzling symbols and scenes found in ancient cave art across the world, each one a potential piece of a lost puzzle. From the winding caves of Lascaux to the remote shelters of Indonesia, these markings defy simple explanation. Why would someone paint a handprint over and over in the same spot? What does a row of dots beneath a wounded animal signify? Could a spiral carved into the rock be more than decoration, maybe a marker for something buried or a signpost to another world? The more we study them, the more questions arise, and the answers might rewrite what we think we know about early human communication. This isn't just about solving a prehistoric riddle, it's about stepping into the minds of people who lived millennia before us, people who saw the world in ways we can barely fathom. Their messages, hidden in plain sight, could hold insights into how they understood time, nature, even the cosmos. As we unravel these mysteries together, you'll start seeing these paintings differently, not as static images, but as whispers from the past waiting to be heard. So let's begin the journey. The walls are talking. It's time to listen. Deep inside France's Lascaux cave, one painting stands out as particularly haunting. A strange, bird-headed figure sprawled on the ground, arms outstretched, while a massive bison looms over him, its belly pierced by what appears to be a spear. This surreal scene, often called the bird-headed man or the dying shaman, has sparked fierce debate among archaeologists and historians. At first glance, it might look like a simple hunting scene, but the details tell a far more mysterious story. The human figure isn't just lying down, he's in a position that suggests ecstasy or collapse, his body limp as if in a trance, his bird-like head, resembling a mask or perhaps a supernatural transformation, hints at something beyond the ordinary. And then there's the bison, not just fleeing or grazing, but wounded, its intestines spilling out in a way that feels almost deliberate, almost symbolic. Some researchers believe this isn't a literal hunt but a depiction of a shamanic journey, where the boundaries between human, animal, and spirit blur. Shamans in many traditional cultures enter altered states to communicate with the spirit world, often taking on animal attributes. Could this be one of the earliest records of such a ritual? The spear might not represent a physical weapon but a spiritual tool, a way to pierce the veil between worlds. Others argue the figure could be an early deity, a god of the hunt or the underworld, worshipped by the cave's artists. Then there's the placement. This image isn't tucked away in some forgotten corner. It's positioned prominently, surrounded by other animals and mysterious symbols, as if it were the centerpiece of a larger narrative. Were the cave's visitors meant to see this and understand something profound about life, death, or the unseen forces around them? Perhaps most intriguing is what we might never know. Without written records, this painting remains a riddle, one that invites us to look deeper, to question not just what we're seeing, but why it was important enough to immortalize in stone. It's a reminder that these ancient artists weren't just decorating walls, they were conveying ideas, beliefs, maybe even warnings, in a language of symbols we're still learning to read. High on the ceilings of Spain's Altamira cave, a herd of bison seems to pulse with life, their bodies painted in rich red ochre, their muscles tensed as if frozen mid-motion. What makes these images extraordinary isn't just their artistic mastery, but the way they're arranged, overlapping, almost entangled, as if the artists were trying to capture movement itself. Some researchers suggest this isn't just static art, it could be an early attempt at animation, a prehistoric flipbook meant to depict the animals in action. If you move a flickering torch across the ceiling, the shadows play tricks on your eyes, making the bison appear to shift and breathe. It's a mesmerizing effect that raises a tantalizing question. Were these artists experimenting with storytelling through motion, thousands of years before the invention of film? But there's another layer to this mystery. Look closely and you'll notice the bison aren't randomly placed. They cluster in groups, their positions varying, some standing alert, others lying down, a few with heads lowered as if grazing. This careful arrangement might be more than artistic flair. Anthropologists studying hunter-gatherer societies have noted how seasonal changes dictate animal behavior. Herds migrate, rest in predictable patterns, or become more active during certain times of year. Could these paintings be a coded guide, a hunting calendar etched in pigment? The lying bison might represent winter lethargy, while the alert ones signal the urgency of spring migrations. Supporting this theory, the cave's layout adds another clue. The bison herd isn't near the entrance but deep inside, in a chamber that would have required effort to reach. This wasn't casual doodling, it was intentional, perhaps even ceremonial. Some scholars speculate that the paintings served as a teaching tool, a way to pass down knowledge about animal behavior across generations. Imagine an elder pointing to the ceiling, explaining, "When the bison gather like this, it's time to prepare for the hunt." Yet the most striking detail is the color. The red ochre used isn't just visually striking, it's symbolic. In many ancient cultures, red represented life, blood, or spiritual power. By painting the bison this way, the artists may have been doing more than recording what they saw. They could have been infusing the images with meaning, turning them into talismans for a successful hunt or rituals to honor the animals they relied on. What's remarkable is how these interpretations aren't mutually exclusive. The Altamira bison could be art, animation, and almanac all at once, a testament to the complexity of ancient minds. These artists weren't just observers of their world, they were its interpreters, encoding layers of knowledge into their work. And as we stand beneath those towering figures today, we're left to wonder how many other messages are hidden in their brushstrokes, waiting for us to decipher. Hidden among the magnificent animal paintings in France's Chauvet cave, something far more unsettling emerges: clusters of red dots, smeared handprints, and strange, looping lines scattered across the walls. At first glance, they seem almost random, like accidental smudges or idle doodles. But when scientists examined these markings more closely, they uncovered a startling possibility. These could be the world's oldest records of a volcanic eruption, a fiery catastrophe witnessed by the artists themselves. The dots aren't just haphazard, they're often grouped in lines or arcs, resembling sprays of debris or falling embers. Nearby, handprints press into the rock as if reaching out in alarm, their fingers stretched wide. Most compelling of all, geological evidence confirms that around 36,000 years ago, a series of violent eruptions rocked the nearby Ardèche region, spewing ash and molten rock across the landscape. Could these paintings be an ancient eyewitness account, a desperate attempt to preserve the memory of that disaster? Some researchers argue the markings match the trajectory of volcanic projectiles, tracing the paths of molten rock flung through the air. Others point to the handprints, suggesting they might symbolize people fleeing, or perhaps even lives lost. The looping lines could represent rivers of lava, their twisting paths burned into collective memory. What's haunting is the realization that these artists weren't just decorating a cave, They might have been encoding a warning, a plea to future generations. Remember this. It could happen again. Supporting this theory, the dots and handprints frequently appear near the cave's entrance, a place where natural light would have made them highly visible. Were they positioned deliberately, ensuring anyone entering would see them immediately? And why use red ochre, a color often linked to danger or blood in ancient cultures? The choice feels intentional, as if the artists wanted to convey urgency, to sear the memory of the eruption into the minds of those who came after. But there's another layer to this mystery. Among the chaos of dots, some markings form deliberate shapes, circles, lines, even what look like rudimentary maps. Could these be attempts to document the eruption's impact, marking where the fire fell or safe paths to escape? Without written language, symbols were their only tool to preserve knowledge across centuries. The most chilling possibility is that this wasn't just a historical record but a prophetic one. Oral traditions in indigenous cultures often contain detailed warnings about natural disasters passed down through generations. If the Chauvet artists survived such an event, their paintings might have served a dual purpose: to memorialize the past and prepare for the future. Standing in that cave today, the weight of their message lingers. Those red dots aren't just pigment on stone, they're echoes of a day the sky rained fire, a story etched in fear and reverence. And if we're right about their meaning, they're proof that even 36,000 years ago, humans weren't just surviving. They were observing, interpreting, and leaving behind a language of resilience written in the only ink they had: earth, blood, and memory. Deep in the shadows of Trois-Frères cave, a figure stares back at you from the rock. A haunting fusion of man and beast, its antlers curling upward like a crown, its eyes wide and otherworldly. Known as the Sorcerer, this enigmatic painting has baffled researchers for over a century. Is it a god, a shaman draped in animal hides, or proof that our ancestors believed in the power to transform between human and creature? The figure's posture is a resting, crouched low, one hand pressed to the ground, the other raised as if in mid-chant. Its legs bend at an unnatural angle, almost animalistic, while its face, with its owl-like gaze, feels neither fully human nor entirely beast. One prevailing theory suggests this could be a shaman caught in the act of ritual. Across countless indigenous cultures, spiritual leaders wear animal regalia to channel the creature's strength or wisdom during ceremonies. The antlers might symbolize a connection to the stag, an animal revered for its grace and vitality. But there's a twist: the figure's hybrid features aren't just decorative. The way its human torso blends seamlessly into animal limbs suggests something more profound, a being that exists in two worlds at once. Could this be an early depiction of shape-shifting, a visual echo of myths where humans and animals exchange forms? Others argue the sorcerer might represent a deity, a master of animals or a guardian spirit. In hunter-gatherer societies, survival depended on understanding and respecting the natural world. A half-human, half-stag god could embody the delicate balance between predator and prey, a reminder of humanity's place in the cosmic order. The cave's acoustics add weight to this idea. The chamber where the sorcerer appears has unusual sound properties. Whispers echo unnaturally, and drumbeats resonate deep in the rock. Was this space chosen for rituals, with the sorcerer as a silent witness to chants or dances meant to invoke its power? Then there's the placement. The sorcerer isn't just another painting among many. It's positioned at a convergence point where multiple passageways meet. This strategic location hints at a symbolic role, a guide or guardian at a spiritual crossroads. Some researchers even propose the figure could be a map marker, signaling a sacred or dangerous area within the cave's labyrinth. But perhaps the most intriguing clue lies in the brushstrokes themselves. Unlike the realistic animals painted elsewhere in the cave, the sorcerer is stylized, exaggerated, as if the artist wanted to emphasize its unnatural nature. The lines are bolder, the colors more vivid, as though this wasn't meant to depict something seen but something believed. What's striking is how these interpretations intertwine. The sorcerer could simultaneously be a shaman, a god, and a myth, a testament to the fluidity of ancient thought. For its creators, the boundaries between reality and the unseen may have been porous, and this figure, frozen in pigment and time, could be their way of bridging those worlds. Standing before it today, we're left with more questions than answers. Was it meant to inspire awe, fear, or devotion? Or was it something far more personal, an ancestor's attempt to capture the ineffable, to say, this is what the unseen looks like? In the depths of France's Pech Merle cave, two horses emerge from the stone painted in stark black outlines, their bodies dappled with delicate, swirling spots. These aren't the solid brown or black horses we're used to seeing in ancient art. They're splashed with patterns that look more like leopards than stallions. For decades, researchers dismissed the spots as pure imagination, a symbolic flourish by the artist. But what if these weren't just creative choices? What if the painters were documenting something real, an extinct breed of horse that once roamed Europe, its coat as wild as the landscapes it inhabited? The mystery deepens when you consider the timing. The Pech Merle paintings date back roughly 25,000 years, a period when Europe's ecosystems were far different from today. Fossil records and genetic studies now confirm something astonishing. Spotted horses did exist. Scientists analyzing DNA from ancient horse remains found a gene associated with leopard-like coat patterns, proving these animals weren't mythical, they were real. This raises a tantalizing possibility. The artists of Pech Merle might have been painting from life, capturing creatures they saw with their own eyes. But there's another layer to this discovery. The horses aren't alone on the cave walls. Their spotted bodies are surrounded by stenciled human hands, red dots, and strange cloud-like shapes. Some researchers argue the spots aren't just realistic details, they could carry symbolic weight. In many indigenous cultures, spotted animals are tied to the spirit world, seen as messengers or guides. The way the spots swirl like constellations might hint at a celestial connection, as if the horses were bridges between earth and sky. Then there's the placement. The horses aren't tucked away in some forgotten corner. They dominate a chamber that would have required effort to reach, suggesting this wasn't casual art but something ceremonial. The handprints nearby add to the intrigue. Many are smaller, possibly belonging to adolescents. Were these paintings part of an initiation rite, a way to pass down knowledge about rare and sacred animals? The most compelling question remains, why paint spotted horses at all? If they were rare, their unusual coats might have made them stand out as omens or talismans. Or perhaps their patterns held practical significance. Hunters tracking them would have needed different strategies than for solid-colored prey. The dots could even represent wounds or ritual markings, turning the horses into living canvases for human stories. What's remarkable is how this single painting bridges science and symbolism. The DNA evidence grounds it in reality, while the artistry transcends pure documentation. These horses are more than animals. They're a snapshot of a lost world, a fusion of observation and belief. Standing before them today, we're left to wonder, were the artists of Pech Merle simply recording what they saw, or were they encoding a deeper message about the interplay of nature and the sacred? The spots may be clues not just to an extinct breed, but to how ancient people made sense of a world where the line between the ordinary and the extraordinary was forever blurred. High on the weathered sandstone walls of India's Bhimbetka rock shelters, thousands of tiny, circular depressions known as cupules dot the surface, some arranged in clusters, others in precise geometric patterns. At first glance, they might seem like nothing more than random marks, the result of erosion or idle chiseling. But when archaeologists mapped their positions, a startling possibility emerged. These could be one of humanity's earliest attempts to track time itself, a lunar calendar carved in stone over 10,000 years ago. The cupules aren't randomly scattered. In certain panels, they appear in groups of 28 or 29, a number that mirrors the days of a lunar cycle. Some clusters even form arcs or lines resembling the waxing and waning phases of the moon. This isn't just a local anomaly. Similar cupule arrangements have been found in Australia, Africa, and Europe, suggesting ancient cultures separated by continents might have shared a universal fascination with celestial rhythms. Could these patterns be proof of a prehistoric timekeeping network where knowledge of the moon's cycles was passed across generations and perhaps even across cultures? But there's another layer to their purpose. Many cupules are positioned near painted scenes of animals or human figures, often at points where natural light strikes them during solstices or equinoxes. In one striking example, sunlight filters through a narrow cave opening at dawn, illuminating a specific set of cupules only during the winter solstice. This careful alignment hints at something beyond mere counting. It suggests ceremony, a way to mark sacred moments in the annual cycle. Indigenous communities in the region still speak of traditions where such markings were used to predict monsoons or signal migration seasons. Were the Bhimbetka cupules part of a larger ritual language linking sky, earth, and human survival? Then there's the tactile element. Unlike paintings, cupules are meant to be touched. Running your fingers over them, you can feel the smooth, worn edges centuries of human contact. Some researchers speculate they were used in initiation rites, where initiates placed offerings or traced the depressions as part of a spiritual journey. Others point to their acoustic properties. When struck with a stone, certain cupules emit resonant tones, almost like a primitive musical instrument. Could sound have played a role in their meaning, turning the rock face into a kind of interactive shrine? What's most compelling is how these interpretations intertwine. The cupules could simultaneously be calendar, altar, and artifact, a testament to the interconnectedness of ancient knowledge. Their creators didn't separate science from spirituality. To them, tracking the moon's phases might have been as sacred as it was practical. And when we compare them to similar finds worldwide, from France's Lascaux to Australia's Arnhem Land, a pattern emerges. Humanity's earliest innovators weren't just surviving. They were observing, calculating, and leaving behind messages in stone, whispering across millennia that the sky above mattered as much as the ground beneath their feet. Standing before these unassuming marks today, it's humbling to realize how much they might have held. Not just dates or rituals, but an entire worldview, one where time was etched into the land itself, waiting for the right light, the right hands, or the right moment to reveal its secrets. The cupules don't just record the moon's passage. They invite us to ponder how deeply our ancestors looked up and how much they longed to understand the dance of the heavens. In the sun-baked cliffs of Algeria's Tassili N'Ajjer, a peculiar figure towers over the ancient rock canvas, its round, featureless head dwarfing its spindly limbs, its body encased in what looks like a bulky, segmented suit. Locals call it the Jabaran, but to modern eyes it's unmistakable. This painting, dating back nearly 8,000 years, bears an uncanny resemblance to an astronaut. The resemblance is so striking that it sparked decades of debate. Is this proof of extraterrestrial contact in prehistoric times, or something even more intriguing, a glimpse into how ancient cultures envisioned journeys beyond the earthly realm? The astronaut theory isn't just fringe speculation. The figure's helmet-like head and what appear to be straps or tubes across its torso have led some researchers to propose that it could depict a visitor from the stars. Ancient astronaut enthusiasts point to similar figures in other prehistoric art worldwide, suggesting a shared memory of otherworldly beings, but mainstream archaeologists offer a different perspective. The figure's elongated limbs and exaggerated proportions align with known shamanic art from the region. In many indigenous traditions, shamans wear elaborate ritual garb, headpieces that obscure the face, flowing garments that mimic celestial beings, to signal their role as intermediaries between worlds. Could the Jabaran be one of these spiritual travelers, frozen mid-ritual, their costume interpreted through a modern lens as a spacesuit? Then there's the context. The astronaut isn't isolated. It's surrounded by paintings of daily life, herds of cattle, hunters with bows, even scenes of dancing. This juxtaposition hints at a deeper meaning. In some African cosmologies, the boundary between the physical and spiritual worlds is fluid, and certain individuals are believed to traverse it. The figure's raised arms, a common motif in rock art, might represent ecstatic surrender or a gesture of invocation. Its oval head could symbolize the moon or a spirit vessel, not a helmet. A third theory merges these ideas. The Jabaran might represent a spirit traveler, a concept found in many animist traditions. Across cultures, from the Arctic to the Amazon, rituals involve donning sacred attire to journey into unseen realms, sometimes described as floating among the stars or diving into the earth. The suit-like details might not be technological but metaphorical, depicting the spiritual armor needed to navigate these dangerous voyages. What's fascinating is how this single image mirrors humanity's timeless fascination with the unknown. Whether it's a shaman, an alien, or a symbolic bridge between worlds, the Jabaran speaks to the same impulse that drives us today to reach beyond our limits and imagine what lies just out of sight. It's a reminder that ancient artists didn't just record their world. They stretched the boundaries of what it meant to be human, painting not just what they saw, but what they dreamed. And that, perhaps, is the most alien and most beautiful thing of all. Carved into the steep canyon walls of Patagonia's Pinturas River Valley, the Cueva de los Manos, Cave of Hands, holds an eerie spectacle. Over 800 ghostly handprints, stenciled in vivid reds, whites, and blacks, stretching across the rock like a chorus of voices frozen in time. These aren't just random impressions. They cluster in groups, overlap in layers, and most hauntingly, many are missing fingers. At first glance, they might seem like simple graffiti, ancient tags saying, "I was here." But the deeper you look, the clearer it becomes. This isn't just a record of presence. It's a puzzle, one that sparked debates among archaeologists for decades. Were these hand signatures, spiritual markers, or something far darker? The sheer number of prints suggests this was more than individual expression. Some walls are crowded with hands of all sizes, tiny child-sized outlines pressed beside adult palms, hinting at a communal ritual, perhaps a rite of passage where each generation left its mark. The colors add another clue. Older layers fade into deep burgundy, while newer ones blaze in bright ochre, as if the cave was revisited across centuries, each wave of visitors adding to the collage. But it's the missing fingers that chill the blood. Dozens of prints show hands with truncated digits, some missing a single joint, others lacking entire fingers. Early theories proposed gruesome accidents, frostbite in Patagonia's brutal winters, or hunting mishaps, yet the precision of the absences raises doubts. Would frostbite carve such clean lines? Anthropologists studying indigenous cultures in the region uncovered a startling parallel. Some groups practiced finger amputation as part of mourning rituals or initiations. The Selknam people, who inhabited Tierra del Fuego, believed severing a joint could appease spirits or symbolize a youth's transition into adulthood. If the Cave of Hands encodes a similar tradition, these prints might not just represent who was here, but what they sacrificed to belong. Then there's the placement. The hands aren't scattered randomly. They congregate near painted scenes of hunting, with guanacos, wild ancestors of llamas, and hunters with bolas mid-swing. Some prints even seem to reach toward the animals, as if connecting the human and animal realms. Could this cave have been a sacred space where hunters sought blessings before the chase, leaving their hands as offerings to the spirits of their prey? But the most compelling detail might be the technique itself. Creating these stencils wasn't simple. Artists would chew ochre into a paste, place their hand against the wall, then blow the pigment through a hollow bone or reed, leaving a negative imprint. The act required intimacy, lips touching the tube, breath mingling with earth. This wasn't just art, it was ritual, a way to fuse body and landscape, to say, this is me, part of this stone, this place. Standing in that cave today, surrounded by centuries of hands, you realize these aren't just relics. They're a language, one that speaks of belonging, loss, and the lengths humans will go to mark their existence. Whether signatures, sacrifices, or prayers, they whisper the same message across millennia: we were here, we mattered. And in their silence, they ask us the hardest question of all: what will we leave behind that lasts as long? High on the remote cliffs of Australia's Kimberley region, the Gwion figures stand in silent procession. Tall, elongated forms painted in rich ochre, their slender limbs adorned with intricate tassels, headdresses, and elaborate accessories. Unlike the static poses of most ancient art, these figures seem mid-motion, as if caught in a dance or ceremonial march. Their graceful, almost ethereal proportions have led some researchers to dub them the ballet dancers of the past. But who were these enigmatic beings, and why did artists take such care to depict them in such exquisite detail? The answers might lie at the intersection of mythology, archaeology, and a mystery that stretches back thousands of years. One striking feature is their attire. Many Gwion figures wear intricate accessories, armbands, belts, and elaborate headdresses that shimmer with what appears to be fiber or feather details. These aren't simple doodles, they're meticulous renderings, suggesting the artists were depicting something, or someone specific. Indigenous oral traditions speak of the Gwion as spirit beings from the dreamtime, the sacred era when ancestral figures shaped the land and its laws. Some elders describe them as messengers or teachers, arriving from distant realms to share knowledge. Could these paintings be portraits of those very beings, immortalized in pigment as part of a cultural memory? But there's another, more controversial theory. The Gwion figures' elongated bodies and unusual proportions have led a handful of researchers to propose they might represent visitors from a lost civilization or even another world. Proponents of this idea point to similarities with other global examples of elongated figures, like the Tassili, astronaut, or the Wandjina spirits of the same region. Yet mainstream archaeologists counter with a simpler explanation. The elongation could be symbolic, representing spiritual ascension or a connection to celestial realms. In many Aboriginal traditions, height and elongation signify sacredness or otherworldliness, not literal physical traits. The context of the paintings adds another layer. The Gwion figures are often found near water sources or travel routes, leading some scholars to suggest they might have served as waymarkers or teaching tools for nomadic groups. Their dynamic poses could depict important ceremonies like initiations or seasonal gatherings. Even more compelling is the technique itself. The pigments used have been found to contain rare minerals, some sourced from hundreds of kilometers away. This wasn't casual art, it was a deliberate, resource-intensive act, implying these figures held profound significance. Then there's the mystery of their age. While exact dating is challenging due to the region's harsh climate, some estimates place the Gwion paintings at over 12,000 years old, making them among the oldest known figurative art on Earth. If that's true, they predate the pyramids by millennia, surviving in a landscape that has witnessed unimaginable change. The resilience of these images raises a haunting question. What stories, rituals, or warnings were so important that they had to endure, etched onto these cliffs for countless generations to see? Perhaps the most poignant interpretation comes from local indigenous communities, who view the Gwion not as ancient artifacts but as living presences. In this perspective, the paintings aren't just records of the past, they're active participants in cultural memory, still holding power and meaning today. The way they stare out from the rock, frozen in their eternal procession, suggests they were meant to be more than art. They might be guides, reminders, or even guardians watching over the land and its people across the ages. Standing before these figures, it's impossible not to feel the weight of their silence. Whether spirits, teachers, or symbols of a forgotten connection, they challenge our assumptions about ancient art's purpose. The Guion don't just depict a hidden message, they are the message, a testament to humanity's enduring need to reach beyond the tangible and touch the divine. And as long as their pigments cling to those cliffs, that message remains. Some truths are too vital to be left to words alone. Buried in the shadows of France's La Marche cave lies an anomaly that defies expectations. Dozens of finely engraved human faces, some gazing serenely, others caught mid-laughter or deep in thought. These aren't the crude stick figures or anonymous silhouettes common in prehistoric art. They're detailed portraits complete with distinct hairstyles, headdresses, and even what appear to be emotions flickering across their features. Dated to roughly 15,000 years ago, these engravings raise a provocative question. Were the artists of La Marche documenting real people, or were they conjuring visions of revered ancestors or mythical beings? The level of detail is startling. One figure wears carefully etched braids coiled like springs, another sports a headband adorned with geometric patterns. A particularly striking portrait shows a face with arched brows and a subtle smirk, as if sharing a private joke across millennia. This individuality is unprecedented in Paleolithic art, where humans were usually reduced to symbolic outlines or omitted entirely in favor of animal depictions. The La Marche faces, by contrast, feel intimate, like snapshots frozen in stone. Some archaeologists argue these could be the world's earliest known portraits, capturing the likenesses of community leaders, healers, or even beloved family members. But there's a twist. Many of the faces overlap or cluster together, some engraved so densely they form a kind of crowd scene. This compositional choice hints at something beyond mere documentation. In societies without written records, oral traditions often relied on visual aids to preserve genealogies or origin stories. Could these layered faces represent a lineage, a visual family tree etched into the cave's walls? The variety in hairstyles adds weight to this theory. Distinctive braids or ornaments might have signaled clan affiliations or social roles, turning the cave into a prehistoric hall of fame. Yet another perspective suggests these faces weren't of the living at all. The cave's low, secluded chambers and the faces' proximity to burial sites in the region have led some researchers to propose they depict ancestors or spirit guides. In many indigenous cultures, hairstyles carry spiritual significance. Braids can symbolize wisdom, shaved heads mourning, and elaborate adornments connections to the divine. The serene expressions on some faces might not reflect personality but transcendence, a portrayal of souls freed from earthly concerns, the most haunting possibility. These could be both portrait and prophecy. Some faces appear intentionally unfinished, their features sketchy or blurred, as if the artists were capturing the fleeting nature of life itself. Others show signs of repeated re-engraving, their lines deepened over generations. This wasn't a one-time act but a dialogue, a way to keep the past present, to say, "We remember you." What's undeniable is how these faces shatter stereotypes of prehistoric art as primitive or purely functional. The La Marche artists wielded their tools with the precision of storytellers, etching not just forms but personalities, relationships, maybe even humor. Whether they're portraits of the dead or the living, they share a universal message. 15,000 years ago, someone looked at another human face and thought, "This matters enough to last forever." And in those delicate lines, we catch a glimpse of something timeless, not just how they saw each other, but how they hoped to be remembered. Beneath the turquoise waters of the Mediterranean, just off the coast of Marseille, lies a cave that time forgot, Cosca Cave, its entrance submerged 37 meters below the sea's surface. To reach it today, you'd need scuba gear and nerves of steel, but 20,000 years ago, when sea levels were drastically lower, this was dry land, its walls waiting to become a canvas. And what's painted there is nothing short of astonishing. Not just the usual suspects like bison and horses, but creatures that shouldn't be here. Seals basking on rocks, penguins standing sentinel, even fish species that today are found hundreds of kilometers away. This isn't just a gallery of ancient wildlife, it's a riddle wrapped in saltwater and stone. The penguins are the first clue. These aren't the familiar Antarctic birds we know today, but a now extinct species called the great auk, which once thrived in the North Atlantic. Their presence in the cave's art suggests the artists either traveled extraordinary distances or lived in a world where these birds ventured much farther south. Then there's the seals, some clustered in groups, others mid-swim, their bodies rendered with such precision you can almost hear their barks echoing off the walls. But here's what's baffling: the nearest seal colonies today are far to the north. So how did they end up immortalized here? One theory points to memory. The artists might have been descendants of coastal tribes who migrated inland as ice ages altered shorelines, carrying stories and mental images of creatures they'd left behind. In this light, the paintings become more than records. They're keepsakes, a way to hold onto a vanishing world. The careful details, the curve of a seal's whiskers, the way a penguin's wings fold, hint at first-hand knowledge, as if the painters were working from vivid recollections. But another possibility is even more dramatic. These paintings could map lost landscapes. Around the time Kosker's art was created, vast stretches of now drowned coastline were exposed, including land bridges and river valleys teeming with life. Recent underwater archaeology has confirmed that parts of the Mediterranean shelf were once thriving ecosystems, with lagoons and estuaries that could have supported seals and auks. If the cave's artists were depicting what they saw nearby, these paintings might be proof that their world extended far beyond today's shores, a lost Atlantis of sorts swallowed by rising seas. The cave's layout adds another layer. Unlike other sites where art is concentrated near entrances, Kosker's creatures are deep inside, reached only by navigating narrow, twisting passages. This wasn't casual decoration, it was deliberate, almost ritualistic. Some researchers speculate the journey through the cave mirrored migratory routes, with the paintings serving as waypoints or spiritual markers. The presence of hand stencils, some missing fingers, like those in Patagonia, hints that this space held ceremonial significance, a place where the boundaries between land and sea, past and present, blurred. What's chilling is how contemporary this all feels. As climate change reshapes our own coastlines, Kosker's submerged art becomes a poignant echo. The cave itself is vanishing. Rising waters have already destroyed some paintings, and salt erosion threatens the rest. In that sense, these ancient images are more than historical records, they're warnings, reminders that landscapes aren't permanent, and that even the mightiest creatures can disappear. Standing before these paintings, or more accurately, floating above them, you're left with a humbling thought. The artists of Kosker didn't just document their world. They captured its fragility, encoding a message not just about what was, but what could be lost. And as the sea creeps higher, their whispers grow louder. Look closely. Remember, deep in the thorn-scattered canyons of Brazil's Serra do Capivara, the rock walls erupt with motion. Figures twirl mid-air, arms linked in dynamic chains, their legs bent as if caught in the ecstatic height of a dance. These aren't solitary hunters or static animals. They're scenes pulsing with life, crowded with dozens of participants frozen in what looks like celebration, conflict, or perhaps something more otherworldly. What makes these paintings so mesmerizing and so baffling isn't just their energy, but the way some figures seem to hover above the ground, their feet barely grazing the earth. Are we witnessing an ancient festival, a forgotten battle, or a glimpse into a ritual where gravity itself was defied? The dancing figures dominate many panels, their bodies painted in vibrant reds and ochres, their movements so fluid they seem to ripple across the stone. Some clasp hands in spiraling formations, evoking modern-day folk dances still practiced in the region. Others wield what appear to be sticks or bows, their postures tense. Are these weapons or ceremonial props? Archaeologists are divided. Indigenous oral histories from nearby communities describe annual gatherings where dance and sport blurred, competitions held to honor ancestors or settle disputes without bloodshed. Could these paintings immortalize such events, capturing a moment where movement was both art and arbitration? Then there are the floaters. These figures hover above the fray, their limbs loose, their toes pointed downward as if suspended by invisible strings. Unlike the grounded dancers, their faces often tilt skyward, their arms outstretched like wings. One compelling theory ties them to shamanic trances, where spiritual leaders were said to leave their bodies and travel to celestial realms. In many Amazonian traditions, altered states induced by sacred plants or rhythmic drumming were described as flights of the soul. The artists might have been documenting this literal elevation, a visual metaphor for transcendence. But the context complicates things. Some floaters appear alongside animals: jaguars with unnaturally elongated bodies, deer with antlers that spiral like vines. This fusion of human and animal traits hints at transformation myths, where dancers took on the attributes of their spirit guides. Even more striking are the geometric patterns woven into the scenes, zigzags that could represent sound waves of music or concentric circles resembling portals. Were these elements meant to evoke the sensory overload of ritual, the drumbeats, the chants, the boundary between worlds thinning? The scale of these paintings adds another layer. Unlike the intimate handprints of Patagonia or the solitary Sorcerer of Trois-Frères, Serra do Capivara's murals are communal, sprawling across entire cliff faces. This wasn't art meant for a select few. It was public, participatory, designed to be seen by many. The sheer number of overlapping figures suggests these scenes were revisited, repainted, perhaps across generations, turning the walls into a living archive of collective memory. What lingers is the question of purpose. Were these paintings instructional, preserving the steps of sacred dances for future initiates, or were they votive offerings of pigment and effort to unseen forces? The truth might lie in between. The floaters, the dancers, the hybrid creatures, they all point to a culture where the physical and spiritual weren't separate realms but facets of the same existence. To paint a figure mid-air wasn't fantasy. It was testimony, a record of moments when the ordinary world bent and the impossible became real. Standing before these walls today, you can almost hear the drums, feel the heat of bodies in motion. The artists didn't just depict a ritual, they captured its energy, its breath, its fleeting magic, and in doing so, they left a message as clear as it is cryptic. Some truths aren't told, they're danced. Carved into the schist cliffs of Portugal's Coa Valley, a chaotic menagerie stretches across the rock. Horses, aurochs, and deer stacked atop one another, their outlines overlapping so densely that some are nearly indistinguishable. At first glance, it might look like artistic chaos, a jumble of creatures crammed haphazardly onto the stone, but look closer and a pattern emerges. These aren't random carvings piled together by chance. They're deliberate, layered narratives, each animal a brushstroke in a much larger story. The question is, what story? One compelling theory revolves around time. Unlike static portraits of solitary beasts, these overlapping engravings could be capturing movement, the same herd migrating across seasons, or generations of animals passing through a territory. The way some horses appear to step into the space where others fade suggests sequence, as if the artists were experimenting with early animation. Imagine a flickering torchlight cast across the wall, shadows animating the herd into motion. Indigenous cultures from the Americas to Siberia have used layered imagery to depict time's passage, where each iteration represents a different moment in a cyclical journey. Could the Coa Valley's artists have been doing the same, etching not just what they saw, but how it changed? Then there's the behavioral angle. Modern wildlife biologists note how herd animals move in fluid, overlapping patterns, leaders shifting, younger animals falling back, the group structure constantly in flux. The density of the engravings mirrors this dynamism, with some figures clustered tightly, others straying to the edges. One panel even shows aurochs with heads lowered in what looks like sparring, their horns intersecting like tangled branches. This isn't just observation, it's an intimate understanding of animal social structures encoded in stone. But the most haunting possibility is that these layers aren't literal at all. In many ancient cultures, overlapping images signify transformation myths where humans become animals or spirits shift forms. Some Cueva Valley engravings show creatures with features blending unnaturally, a deer's body with a horse's head, or an aurochs whose horns spiral into geometric symbols. These hybrids might represent shamanic visions or ancestral beings, their fluid identities reflected in the very technique of the art. The context deepens the mystery. Many engraved panels face east, aligned with sunrise during equinoxes, suggesting celestial events could have dictated when and how these stories were told. Some clusters appear near water sources where animals and humans would have gathered seasonally. This strategic placement hints at ritual, a way to mark time or summon prey through symbolic repetition. What's striking is how these interpretations intertwine. The Cueva Valley's artists didn't just record the world, they dissected it, exploring time, behavior, and belief through the interplay of lines. Each layer isn't redundancy, it's resonance, a way to say, this happened, then this, and all of it matters. Standing before these cliffs today, you're not just seeing art. You're witnessing the birth of narrative itself, a language without words where meaning hides in the spaces between. Hidden deep in the limestone caves of Borneo's East Kalimantan, a towering image stretches across the rock, a vast, branching form that pulses with life, its limbs twisting outward like veins across the stone. This is the Gua Tuat Tree of Life, a sprawling, reddish-brown masterpiece dating back at least 40,000 years, possibly the oldest known depiction of nature's interconnected web. At first glance, it might resemble a simple plant or river system, but the closer you look, the more layers emerge. Delicate root-like tendrils fan into the earth, while its upper branches dissolve into swirling patterns resembling clouds or celestial bodies. This isn't just a tree, it's a cosmology, a map of existence painted in ochre and time. What makes this painting so extraordinary isn't just its age, but its uncanny resemblance to later symbols found across cultures: Yggdrasil, the Norse world tree, the Bodhi tree of Buddhist enlightenment, even the Mesopotamian tree of life. Could these shared motifs point to something primal, a universal human understanding of nature's unity? Indigenous groups in Borneo still speak of sacred trees as bridges between realms, their roots anchoring the underworld, their trunks the earthly plane, their branches reaching the heavens. The Gua Tuat artists might have been encoding this same idea millennia earlier, visualizing a truth that transcends geography and era, that all life is linked from soil to stars. But there's another possibility. The tree isn't isolated. Surrounding it are hand stencils, animal figures, and zigzagging lines that some researchers interpret as waterways or lightning. This context suggests the painting wasn't just symbolic but functional, a teaching tool or spiritual diagram. Modern ethnographers working with Borneo's Dayak peoples note how elders use similar imagery to explain ecological balance. Trees sustain rivers, rivers feed animals, animals nourish humans. The Gua Tuat mural could be an ancient blueprint for this wisdom, a reminder that disrupting one thread risks unraveling the whole web. The technique itself adds depth. Unlike the bold outlines of European cave art, this tree is rendered with feathery strokes, its edges blending into the rock as if part of it. The artists didn't just paint on the cave, they collaborated with it, letting natural contours shape roots and branches. This intimacy hints at a belief system where art wasn't separate from nature but an extension of it, a ritual act of reciprocity, not just representation. Yet the most haunting question remains: why here? The cave's remote chamber, accessible only by navigating narrow passages, suggests this space was chosen deliberately, perhaps for its resonance. In some traditions, caves are considered wombs of the earth, places where creation stories unfold. Painting a tree of life in such a setting might have been a way to ground cosmic order in sacred geography, to say, this is where the world begins. Standing before this ancient mural today, what's striking isn't just its artistry but its urgency. In an age of climate collapse, its message echoes louder than ever. That survival depends on remembering what these artists knew. Roots and branches, earth and sky are not separate. They are one breathing system, a truth as vital now as it was 40,000 years ago. The Guatuit tree doesn't just connect realms, it spans time itself, whispering across millennia that some truths never change. On the humid walls of Indonesia's Ling Tedong cave, a pig stares back at you, its bristled hide rendered in deep red ochre, its body frozen mid-stride as if darting across the stone. At 45,000 years old, this life-sized warty pig isn't just ancient, it's the oldest known figurative art on Earth. But what makes it truly remarkable aren't the years it survived, it's the details. The artist didn't just paint a generic boar, they exaggerated its most distinctive feature, the fleshy, wart-like growths that puff around its snout, a hallmark of Sulawesi's endemic species. This wasn't accidental. Every stroke suggests intention, a choice to immortalize not just an animal but an identity. The pig's prominence hints at its cultural weight. In modern Sulawesi, warty pigs remain central to indigenous cosmology, symbols of strength, fertility, and clan lineage. Some communities still trace ancestry through pig herding traditions, where specific markings denote familial ties. Could this ancient painting serve a similar purpose? The exaggerated warts might be more than realism. They could signal clan affiliation, turning the cave wall into a prehistoric crest or a declaration. We are the people of this beast. Supporting this, the pig isn't alone. Faint traces of other figures, perhaps humans or additional animals, flank it, their outlines too faded to decipher. This could have been a narrative, a visual epic of kinship or conquest. Then there's the magic. Across Southeast Asia, hunters historically created animal effigies to summon prey or honor spirits. The Sulawesi pig's placement deep in a limestone cavern, far from daylight, suggests it wasn't decorative but ritualistic. Its pigments were mixed with binding agents that withstand humidity, implying the artists meant it to endure, as if its power needed to persist. Modern ethnographic parallels abound. The Mentawai people of Sumatra paint spirit animals to ensure successful hunts, while Borneo's Dayak carve wooden pigs as offerings to forest deities. If the Ling Tedong artists shared these beliefs, their painting might have been a conduit between worlds, a way to plead with or thank the unseen forces that governed their survival. But the mystery deepens with technique. The pig's outline was first sketched using fingers dipped in pigment, then filled with careful strokes. Handprints nearby, some small enough to belong to children, hint at communal involvement, perhaps a rite where multiple generations contributed. Even more striking is the pig's posture, one leg lifted mid-motion. This dynamism is rare in Paleolithic art, where animals often stand stiffly. Was the artist capturing a moment of vitality or embedding movement into the image to somehow animate the hunt? What's undeniable is the sophistication. 45 millennia ago, someone observed their world with a naturalist's eye and a storyteller's heart. They didn't just see a pig, they saw its essence, the warts that made it unique, the gait that signaled life. And in painting it, they left a legacy that outlasted empires, languages, even species. Today, as we marvel at those faded red lines, we're not just looking at art. We're witnessing the birth of symbolism itself, the moment humans realized a shape on a wall could hold meaning far beyond its form. scattered across the rugged cliffs of Italy's Valcamonica Valley. Thousands of sun symbols blaze from the rock, some simple circles with radiating lines, others intricate spirals or wheels with spokes that seem to spin if you stare too long. These aren't isolated doodles, they repeat over and over, clustered in groups or standing alone, carved by generations of artists spanning thousands of years. At first glance, they might look like primitive sun worship, a universal symbol of light and life, but the more you study them, the more they resist easy explanation. Why would these symbols appear alongside hunting scenes and warrior processions? Why do some resemble precise geometric patterns while others explode into chaotic bursts? The answers might rewrite our understanding of how ancient Europeans tracked time, worshipped, and even mapped the heavens. One striking feature is their variation. The simplest design circles with crosses inside mirror solar symbols found from Bronze Age Scandinavia to Neolithic China. But others are far more complex, concentric rings with dots between them, like planets orbiting a central star, or jagged rays that evoke solar flares. This diversity suggests they weren't just decorative, they might have served multiple purposes across centuries. For farming communities in Valcamonica, the sun's path dictated planting and harvest. Some researchers argue these carvings could be agricultural calendars, with certain symbols marking solstices or equinoxes. Supporting this, a few panels align with sunrise during key seasonal transitions, illuminating specific carvings like a prehistoric spotlight. But there's another, more enigmatic layer. Some suns appear alongside cup marks, small, drilled depressions that archaeologists once dismissed as random. When mapped, these cup marks occasionally form patterns mirroring constellations like Orion or the Pleiades. Could the sun symbols be part of a larger celestial map with cup marks as stars? Indigenous European traditions often link the sun's journey to specific star formations, using them to navigate or time migrations. The Valcamonica artists might have been encoding this knowledge in stone, turning cliffs into an eternal almanac. Then there's the ritual angle. Many suns are carved near human figures with raised arms, as if in prayer or dance. Others loom above scenes of battle or fertility rites, their rays morphing into weapons or vines. In Celtic and pre-Celtic cosmologies, the sun wasn't just a god. It was a living force that governed war, crops, and the cycle of life and death. The way these symbols dominate certain panels hints at their spiritual weight, as if their very presence sanctified the space. Some even show suns with faces, their rays twisting into limbs, a possible depiction of a solar deity walking among mortals. The most compelling theory, though, bridges all these ideas. The sun symbols might not be either practical or sacred, but both. Ancient cultures rarely separated science from spirituality. Tracking the sun's movements was both survival and worship. A spiral could be a solstice marker and a prayer for light. A spoked wheel might map the sun's annual journey while invoking its power. The repetition across generations suggests these carvings were a language, one where meaning layers like the rings of a tree. Standing before these symbols today, their resilience is humbling. Ice ages, wars, millennia of weathering, they've endured it all, still pulsing with the same energy their creators felt. Whether calendars, gods, or cosmic maps, they whisper a truth their carvers knew intimately. The sun wasn't just a distant star, it was the heartbeat of the world, and these cliffs were their way of touching it. Among the sun-baked cliffs of Australia's Kakadu National Park, something extraordinary emerges from the rock paintings of fish, kangaroos, and turtles that don't just show their outer forms but reveal what lies beneath. Their skeletons and organs laid bare as if the stone itself has turned transparent. Known as X-ray art, these intricate images date back thousands of years, their delicate lines detailing spines, ribs, even digestive tracts with startling precision. At first glance, they might resemble medical diagrams or butchery guides, but the truth behind them is far more layered. a fusion of science, spirituality, and storytelling that challenges our assumptions about ancient knowledge. One of the most striking examples is a barramundi fish, its body split open to expose a backbone running the length of its belly, its gills and swim bladder rendered with almost clinical accuracy. To modern eyes, this could suggest practical instruction, a hunter's guide to anatomy, perhaps, or a way to teach younger generations where to aim spears for clean kills. Indigenous elders in the region confirm that such paintings were used to pass down survival skills, transforming caves into classrooms where every stroke held life or death significance. But the artistry complicates this theory. Many X-ray animals aren't posed realistically. Some float midair, their limbs splayed as if in motion, while others intertwine with geometric patterns or human figures. This isn't textbook realism, it's something more fluid, more alive. Spiritual interpretations unravel another dimension. In Aboriginal cosmology, seeing beyond the surface of things is a sacred gift, often associated with shamans or spirit beings. The Mimi, ancestral figures from local Dreamtime stories, are said to have taught humans how to paint in this style, revealing the inner essence of creatures as an act of revelation. Some X-ray animals appear alongside spirit lines, dotted paths connecting them to humans or objects, suggesting a shared life force. A kangaroo with its heart visible might not just be a dissection. It could be a portrait of sacred interconnectedness, a reminder that all living things pulse with the same energy. Then there's the mystery of the missing organs. Certain paintings omit key anatomical features or distort proportions. A turtle with an oversized liver, a wallaby with no stomach. Ethnographic studies of Aboriginal hunting rituals offer a clue. Specific organs were considered taboo or sacred, removed before consumption as offerings to ancestral spirits. The mistakes in these paintings might not be errors at all, but intentional omissions or emphases tied to ritual practice. The art wasn't just showing what was there, it was encoding what mattered, what was forbidden, what belonged to the unseen world. What's most compelling is how these purposes intertwine. A single X-ray fish could simultaneously teach anatomy, honor the spirit of the creature, and warn against harvesting certain parts. The layered meaning reflects a world where practicality and spirituality weren't opposites but partners, each informing the other. Even the act of painting might have been ceremonial ochre pigments mixed with binding agents like egg yolk or tree sap, their application accompanied by chants or dances to activate the image's power. Standing before these paintings today, their legacy lingers. They're not just artifacts but conversations between past and present, body and spirit, survival and reverence. The X-ray artists didn't just observe the world, they saw through it, uncovering truths that science is only now catching up to. And in those translucent forms, they left a challenge for us to look deeper beyond the surface into the heart of things. Etched into the volcanic boulders of Azerbaijan's Gobestan Reserve, a row of figures leaps across the stone, arms linked, bodies arched, legs bent mid-motion as if frozen in the climax of an ancient dance. These petroglyphs, carved over 5,000 years ago, aren't just static art. They pulse with energy, their poses so dynamic you can almost hear the rhythm that once guided them. But what makes these images truly extraordinary isn't just their movement, it's the cave itself. When struck, the rock here resonates with deep, melodic tones, a natural acoustic so precise it feels like the earth is singing along. Were these dancing figures part of something far more immersive, a ritual where movement, music, and stone converged into sacred harmony? The postures of the dancers offer the first clue. Unlike solitary hunters or static animals found in other petroglyphs, these figures are interconnected, their limbs overlapping in a way that suggests coordinated steps. Some raise arms skyward, others crouch low, their positions mirroring traditional circle dances still practiced in the Caucasus today. Anthropologists note how such dances often serve as communal bonding rituals, their repetitive motions inducing trance-like states. The Gobeston artists might have been documenting or invoking these very experiences, turning the cave wall into a visual echo of collective ecstasy. Then there's the sound. The limestone here isn't inert, it's studded with hollows that produce musical notes when struck with stones. Known as lithophones, these rocks emit tones ranging from deep gongs to high chimes, creating a scale that early musicians could have used like a prehistoric xylophone. In one chamber, petroglyphs of dancers cluster near the most resonant spots, as if the art and acoustics were deliberately paired. This isn't just coincidence, it's choreography. Indigenous cultures from Siberia to Australia incorporate singing rocks into ceremonies, believing their vibrations open portals to the spirit world. Could the Gobeston dancers have moved to this natural music? Their steps sync to the earth's own pulse. The context deepens the mystery. Nearby petroglyphs depict drummers and figures holding what appear to be instruments, reinforcing the link between movement and sound. Even more telling are the footprints fossilized in the cave's soft clay, not random scatters, but deliberate patterns suggesting rhythmic pacing. Archaeologists have found similar prints in ritual sites worldwide, where dance was believed to imprint prayers into the land itself. Here, the combination of art, acoustics, and footprints paints a vivid scene. People dancing in flickering firelight, the air thrumming with struck stone, their shadows merging with the petroglyphs as if the walls had come alive. But the most haunting possibility is that these dances weren't just celebrations, they were maps. Some figures appear near carvings of constellations, their arcs mirroring celestial movements. Others align with solstice sunlight, their shadows elongating to point toward petroglyphs of animals or water sources at key times of year. In this light, the dances might have been navigational, a way to encode seasonal knowledge or migration routes in bodily memory. Oral traditions in the region still speak of star dances, where specific steps correspond to astronomical events, turning human movement into a living almanac. What lingers is the realization that these petroglyphs aren't just images. They're multisensory experiences, invitations to step into a world where art, music, and ritual were inseparable. The Gobeston dancers don't just depict movement, they collapse time, offering a fleeting glimpse of moments when humans didn't just walk the earth, but sang with it, danced across it, and in doing so, perhaps touched something timeless. Their message isn't hidden in stone, but in the spaces between the silence before the first step, the pause between notes, the breath before creation begins. High on the wind-scoured cliffs of Libya's Tadrot Akakis, a procession of strange silhouettes marches across the rock-towering giraffes with necks like bending saplings, their spotted hides rendered in ochre so vivid it blazes against the sandstone. At first glance, they might seem like ordinary animal portraits, but the shock hits when you realize giraffes haven't roamed this part of the Sahara for millennia. So why paint them here, and why alongside creatures that defy zoology altogether, beasts with lion-like bodies and antelope horns, or winged figures that seem part human, part bird? These aren't just artistic flights of fancy, they're puzzles carved in pigment, each stroke whispering of worlds lost to time. The giraffes alone are a riddle. Today, their nearest habitats lie thousands of kilometers south in the savannas of sub-Saharan Africa. But fossil records reveal something astonishing. Around 8,000 years ago, when these paintings were made, the Sahara wasn't a desert. It was a lush mosaic of grasslands and lakes, a green Sahara teeming with life. The giraffes of Tadrot Akakis might have been painted from memory, or even from life, by artists who witnessed the last of these giants before drought transformed their home into dunes. But there's another possibility. The meticulous detail in these paintings, the curve of each hoof, the pattern of spots suggests intimate knowledge. Could they be records of long-distance trade, evidence that ancient Saharan cultures bartered with distant kingdoms where giraffes still thrived? Shell beads from the Mediterranean and obsidian from Ethiopia have been found in nearby archaeological sites, proving these networks existed. The giraffes might not just be animals, they could be symbols of connection, maps of a world far wider than we've imagined. Then there are the hybrids. One striking figure has the body of a lion, the neck of a giraffe, and horns that spiral like a gazelle's. Another looms with outstretched wings, its humanoid face staring blankly from the rock. These chimeras aren't random. Across ancient cultures, composite creatures often guard thresholds between life and death, earth and sky. In Egyptian mythology, the Sphinx protected sacred spaces. Mesopotamian Lamashu stood at palace gates as celestial sentinels. Could the Tadrat beast serve a similar role? The paintings cluster near cave entrances and water sources, places where the boundary between safety and danger was thin. A winged figure might mark a holy site, while a lion giraffe could warn travelers of predators lurking beyond. Yet the most haunting theory merges these ideas. The hybrids might represent not just physical guardians but spiritual ones, embodiments of environmental upheaval. As the Sahara dried, the people of Tadrat would have faced droughts, shifting game, and vanishing rivers. Creating creatures that fused traits of multiple animals could have been a way to process loss, to say, the world is changing and so must we. The giraffes, then, aren't just memories or trade goods. They're emblems of resilience, reminders that survival demands adaptation. Standing before these paintings today, their power lingers. The artists didn't just document their world, they reimagined it, bending reality to hold both what was and what could be. In those fading pigments, we catch a glimpse of a people who refused to be bounded by the limits of their landscape, who painted not just the creatures they knew, but those they dreamed, feared, or revered. And in doing so, they left a message far more profound than any single image, that the truest art often lies not in capturing the world as it is, but as it lives, wild, untamed, and endlessly possible in the human heart. Cutting through the rust-red cliffs of Utah's 9-Mile Canyon, a procession of strange figures marches across the rock, humanoid shapes with bodies flattened into wide, shield-like forms. Their limbs stick thin and spindly, some clutching what look like spears or bows, others frozen mid-dance. These aren't the sleek hunters or towering gods of other ancient art. They're almost cartoonish, their exaggerated proportions and rigid postures giving them the feel of characters ripped from some prehistoric comic strip. But don't let their simplicity fool you. These shield warriors are one of the most hotly debated mysteries in North American rock art, with theories ranging from ritual costumes to interstellar visitors. So what's really going on here? One of the most compelling interpretations ties these figures to warfare. The canyon sits along an ancient trade and migration route, a natural corridor where different cultures would have clashed over resources. The shields aren't just decorative, they're massive, covering nearly the entire torso, suggesting a very real concern with defense. Some figures even appear in battle scenes, lines of warriors facing off, weapons raised, their shield bodies forming an almost impenetrable wall. Archaeologists point to similar depictions in other rock art sites across the Southwest, where shield-bearing figures are linked to periods of intensified conflict. Could the 9-Mile Canyon artists have been documenting actual battles, turning the cliffs into a kind of ancestral war memorial? But there's a twist. Not all the figures look aggressive. Some seem to float or sway, their arms outstretched as if in ceremony rather than combat. This has led some researchers to propose a spiritual angle. Among the Hopi and other Pueblo peoples, shield-like symbols often represent Kachina's spirit beings who mediate between humans and the divine. The warriors' exaggerated bodies might not be literal armor but symbolic armor, a visual shorthand for spiritual protection. Their stiff, repetitive poses could depict ritual dances where movement was meant to invoke supernatural guardians. Supporting this, many figures cluster near caves or springs, places traditionally considered portals to the spirit world. The shields, then, might not deflect arrows, they could ward off darker, unseen forces. Then there's the humor theory. Some scholars argue the figure's exaggerated proportions and almost slapstick poses, spindly legs jutting from hulking shields, arms akimbo like confused stick figures, hint at satire or storytelling. Indigenous oral traditions across the Americas are rich with trickster tales where heroes and fools blur together. Could these paintings be part of a visual narrative poking fun at proud warriors or recounting comic mishaps? The way some figures repeat in sequences, their poses shifting slightly, suggests motion like panels in a graphic novel. Without written records, we'll never know the punchline, but the possibility adds a layer of humanity to these ancient artists. They weren't just chroniclers of war or religion, they might have been storytellers using the canyon walls as their canvas for jokes or cautionary tales. The most haunting detail, though, is the anonymity. Unlike European cave art where hands or tools leave traces of individual artists, the shield warriors are utterly impersonal. No signatures, no variations in style. This repetition feels deliberate, as if the figures were meant to transcend individual identity, becoming symbols of something larger. Whether warriors, spirits, or characters in a lost saga, they've outlasted their creators by centuries, their flat, watchful forms still guarding the canyon's secrets. Standing before them today, it's clear they resist easy categorization. They might be all these things at once, fighters and deities and characters in a story too old to recover. But perhaps that's the point. The shield warriors don't just depict a hidden message, they are the message, a reminder that the past refuses to be pinned down. It dances, fights, laughs, and deflects just like those enigmatic figures on the rock, forever frozen between worlds. Stretching across the sacred rock shelters of Cueva in Australia's Kakadu National Park, a massive serpent coils, its sinuous body painted in ochre, its scales shimmering with every shift of sunlight. This is the rainbow serpent, one of the most powerful beings in Aboriginal Dreamtime stories, a creator deity who shaped rivers, carved mountains, and breathed life into the land itself. But what's fascinating isn't just its cultural significance, it's how eerily similar this serpent appears to myths found continents away. From the feathered Quetzalcoatl of Mesoamerica to the Norse world serpent Jörmungandr, these undulating giants slither through humanity's oldest stories, haunting our collective imagination. Why do these serpentine keep resurfacing across cultures separated by oceans and millennia? The answer might lie not in coincidence, but in the deepest layers of the human psyche. The rainbow serpent isn't just a passive figure in Cueva's art. It's dynamic, its body often forming the contours of the landscape itself. In some paintings, its curves mirror nearby rivers. In others, its mouth gapes like a cave entrance, as if the earth is literally its flesh. Aboriginal elders describe it as both creator and destroyer, a force that brings water to parched land but also floods when angered. This duality, life and chaos intertwined, echoes strikingly in other serpent myths. In Hindu tradition, the cosmic serpent Shesha supports the universe on its many hoods, yet also embodies the destructive power of time. The Aztecs revered Quetzalcoatl as a bringer of knowledge, yet feared his wrath as the wind god who could level cities. Could these parallels hint at something primal, a shared understanding of nature's duality encoded in serpent form? Then there's the serpent's connection to water. The rainbow serpent is often depicted near billabongs or storm clouds, its presence tied to rain and fertility. Halfway across the world, the Chinese dragon dances during monsoons, while West African Vodun traditions worship Dan, the serpent who rules rivers and wells. Even the Bible's Leviathan emerges from the deep. Water is life's most essential element and also its most unpredictable. It's no surprise that cultures who depended on rain or rivers would mythologize its power in similar ways. The serpent, with its fluid motion and ability to vanish underground or into crevices, becomes the perfect metaphor for water's capriciousness. But the most tantalizing theory links these myths to humanity's earliest memories. Some anthropologists propose that serpent archetypes originate from a time when our ancestors shared the landscape with real giants like the Titanoboa, a prehistoric snake as long as a school bus. Could the ubiquity of serpent myths be a distant echo of encounters with these ancient predators, their terror and majesty burned into collective memory? Alternatively, the serpent's shedding skin might have symbolized rebirth, making it a natural emblem for cultures grappling with mortality and renewal. What's undeniable is how these stories transcend geography. Whether painted on Yuba's rocks or carved into Mayan temples, serpent deities share uncanny traits, shape-shifting abilities, control over weather, and roles as mediators between realms. The rainbow serpent doesn't just belong to Australia. It's part of a global tapestry, a thread connecting humanity's oldest questions about creation, destruction, and our place in the natural world. Standing before its vivid form at Yuba, you're not just seeing art, you're witnessing a dialogue across time where cultures who never met whispered the same truths in different tongues. And perhaps that's the real hidden message. Some symbols are too powerful to stay contained. They ripple outward like a serpent's coils, endlessly unfolding. Towering above the dry plains of Texas' lower Pecos Canyonlands, a sprawling mural of red, black, and white figures stretches across the limestone like a fevered dream, elongated human forms with deer antlers, floating orbs, and jagged lines that seem to pulse with energy. This is the White Shaman panel, a 5,000-year-old masterpiece that some researchers believe isn't just art, but a cosmological map, a guide to the spirit world painted in sacred geometries. At first glance, the overlapping figures appear chaotic, but look closer, and patterns emerge, vertical layers dividing the panel into distinct realms, a central axis connecting them, and symbols that might represent celestial bodies. The question isn't just what these shapes mean, but why they were arranged this way. Could this be an ancient Texan Rosetta Stone encoding a shaman's journey through the cosmos? One of the most striking elements is the panel's division into tiers, each populated by distinct figures. At the base, bold red humanoids stand with arms raised, their bodies merging with zigzagging lines that resemble lightning or roots. Above them, antlered figures leap or float, their limbs elongated as if in mid-transformation. Higher still, geometric shapes, dots, crosses, and spirals, cluster like constellations. Archaeologists studying indigenous oral traditions note how many Mesoamerican and Native American cultures viewed the universe as layered: the underworld, the earthly plane, and the heavens. The White Shaman structure might mirror this cosmology, with each tier representing a different realm accessible through ritual. Supporting this, the central axis, a stark white line running vertically, could symbolize the world tree or sacred conduit linking these realms, a pathway for spiritual travel. Then there's the celestial puzzle. Certain symbols bear uncanny resemblance to astronomical phenomena. A sequence of 7 dots near the panel's apex aligns with the Pleiades star cluster, a key navigational and ceremonial marker for many indigenous cultures. Nearby, crescent shapes echo lunar phases, while radiating lines might depict solar eclipses or cometary trails. Even more compelling is the panel's orientation. It faces east, catching the first light of dawn during equinoxes, as if designed to synchronize with celestial events. Modern-day Comanche and Huicol elders recognize similar symbols in their own star lore, suggesting the artists weren't just observers of the sky but meticulous record keepers, embedding celestial calendars into the rock. But the true enigma lies in the central figure, the so-called White Shaman itself. Towering over the composition, this ghostly form is painted in stark white pigment, its arms outstretched to touch both the upper and lower layers. Some scholars interpret it as a deity or ancestral spirit presiding over creation. Others see a shaman mid-ritual, their body serving as a bridge between worlds. The figure's exaggerated fingers, some stretched impossibly long, others missing entirely, mirror depictions of spirit beings in other rock art sites, where distorted anatomy signals supernatural power. Ethnographic accounts from the region describe shamans entering trances to negotiate with spirits for rain or game. The white shaman's pose caught between realms might capture such a moment of transcendence. The most provocative theory, though, ties the panel to a creation narrative. Nearby rock shelters contain paintings of a mythical peyote woman, a figure central to Huichol origin stories who gifted humanity the sacred cactus. The white shaman's antlered figures could represent her companions, while the swirling patterns mirror the visual hallucinations induced by entheogens. If true, the mural isn't just a map. It's a spiritual recipe, a step-by-step guide to traversing the cosmos through ritual. Modern Huichol pilgrims still undertake similar journeys, following peyote visions to reunite with ancestral lands. What lingers is the realization that this panel wasn't meant to be merely seen. It was meant to be experienced, the way the pigments shimmer in certain light, how echoes bounce off the concave rock face. Every detail suggests this was a multisensory portal. The artists didn't just paint a message, they created a conduit, a place where stone, sky, and spirit converged. Standing before it today, you're not just decoding symbols. You're standing at the threshold of a 5,000-year-old invitation to look beyond the visible and walk the path the shamans walked. Hidden among the sweeping herds of rhinos and lions in France's Chauvet cave, an anomaly lingers, a cluster of deeply engraved owl faces, their wide, hollow eyes staring silently from the shadows. These aren't just rare, they're practically unique in Paleolithic art. While our ancestors painted countless horses, bison, and mammoths, owls rarely made the cut. So why here, and why do these particular carvings feel so hauntingly deliberate? Their sharp-beaked profiles etched with a precision that borders on reverence. To unravel this, we need to step into the darkness with them, not just as birds, but as symbols that have unsettled and inspired humans for millennia. The owls of Chauvet aren't tucked away like afterthoughts. They occupy a prominent niche, their faces peering from a limestone panel alongside aurochs and cave bears. Unlike the dynamic animal scenes elsewhere in the cave, these engravings are static, almost icon-like, their features exaggerated large, unblinking eyes, exaggerated ear tufts, and beaks that hook like crescent moons. This stylistic choice isn't accidental. Across cultures, owls are rarely depicted as mere animals. They're omens, watchers, keepers of thresholds. In ancient Greece, they symbolized Athena's wisdom. In Mesopotamian myth, they perched on the shoulders of death gods. Even today, some indigenous Siberian tribes believe owls ferry souls to the afterlife. Could the Chauvet artists have shared similar ideas, carving these faces as guardians of the cave's deepest, darkest chambers? One clue lies in their eyes. Unlike other animals in Chauvet, the owl's eyes aren't mere dots or slits, they're deep, concentric circles, as if drawing the viewer into a vortex. This detail mirrors shamanic art from later periods, where spirals and concentric shapes represent altered states or spiritual vision. The cave's acoustics add weight to this theory. The chamber where the owls cluster amplifies whispers into eerie, owl-like hoots. Was this space used for rituals where the boundary between human and bird, living and dead, blurred? Ethnographic accounts from hunter-gatherer societies describe shamans summoning owl spirits to navigate the underworld or foresee danger. The Chauvet engravings might be footprints from such journeys, a way to mark where the veil was thinnest. Then there's the silence. Owls hunt without sound, their wings cutting through darkness unheard, a trait that might have struck ancient artists as supernatural. In Chauvet's flickering torchlight, these engraved faces would have seemed to materialize from the rock itself, their eyes catching the fire's glow like living creatures. This illusion wasn't just artistry, it was alchemy, transforming stone into sentinel. Some researchers speculate the owls acted as protectors, warding off evil from the cave's sacred spaces. Others suggest they were teachers, Many owl species nest in caves, and their eerie calls might have been interpreted as voices from the wall's ancestors or spirits speaking through them. What's undeniable is the emotional resonance. Even now, meeting those carved eyes triggers a primal response, a mix of awe and unease. The artists didn't just record an animal, they channeled its essence, distilling the owl's mystery into a few masterful lines. Whether guides, gods, or guardians, these faces transcend time. They remind us that some messages aren't meant to be heard, only seen, felt, and carried into the dark. High above the celebrated bison herds of Spain's Altamira cave, almost invisible unless light strikes the ceiling at just the right angle, dozens of faint handprints linger, some small enough to belong to children, others smudged or overlapping as if pressed in haste. These aren't the bold, ochre-drenched stencils found in other caves. They're ghostly, their pigments diluted, their outlines blurred by time. At first glance, they might seem like accidents, failed attempts at art. But their placement tells a different story. These hands aren't scattered randomly. They cluster near the cave's most sacred imagery, the towering bison, the spirals, the symbols that pulse with meaning. So why hide them, and why here, where reaching the ceiling would have required scaffolding or human pyramids, a feat of teamwork and daring? One theory hinges on intimacy. Unlike the vivid animal paintings meant to be seen by many, these handprints feel private, almost secretive. The way they're tucked into the rock's natural contours suggests they weren't meant for public display. Forensic analysis reveals something even more personal. Some prints show crooked fingers or healed fractures, tiny imperfections that turn them into biometric signatures. Were these the cave's artists marking their work, not with pride but humility? In indigenous cultures from the Americas to Australia, touching rock art is often considered a way to absorb its power or leave a piece of oneself behind. The faintness of these prints might not be a flaw, it could be the point, a whisper, not a shout. Then there's the spiritual angle. The prints cluster near cracks in the ceiling where water seeps through, staining the rock with mineral veins. To many ancient cultures, caves were wombs of the earth and water their lifeblood. Placing hands near these veins might have been a way to commune with the unseen forces that shaped the world. Ethnographic accounts from the Amazon describe shamans pressing palms against wet cave walls to drink the stone's energy. Could Altamira's hidden hands be part of a similar ritual, a silent dialogue between flesh and earth? But the most poignant detail is their scale. The smallest prints, barely the size of a toddler's hand, raise haunting questions. Were these children initiated into sacred spaces, their touches a rite of passage, or do they tell a darker story, tiny hands lifted in desperation during famine or illness, seeking intervention from whatever powers dwelled in the dark? The overlap of prints suggests generations participated, turning the ceiling into a living ledger of hope and grief. What's clear is that these weren't casual marks. The effort required to reach the ceiling, building scaffolds, mixing pigments, holding torches aloft, speaks of deliberate intent. In their faintness, they defy the ego-driven impulse to be remembered. Instead, they whisper of something more profound, a belief that touching the stone wasn't just about leaving a mark but receiving one, that in the act of pressing flesh to rock, something passed between, not just pigment but meaning. And in that exchange, the divine wasn't just above them, it was in their hands. Beneath the towering bison of France's Lascaux cave, a lone figure sprawls lifeless, arms outstretched, body limp, his simple bird-headed mask tilting backward as if in surrender. This is the falling man, one of the most debated images in prehistoric art, a scene that raises more questions than answers. To the left, a wounded bison charges, its entrails spilling from a gaping spear wound. To the right, a rhinoceros walks away indifferently. The composition pulses with tension, but the story it tells remains frustratingly out of reach. Is this a tragic hunting accident? A ritual sacrifice, or something far more symbolic, a primal meditation on life, death, and humanity's fragile place in the natural order? the hunting accident theory seems obvious at first glance. The bison's injuries suggest a successful strike, yet its furious charge implies the hunter paid the ultimate price, but inconsistencies emerge. The man's posture is all wrong for a goring victim. His spine curves unnaturally, his limbs slack like a marionette with cut strings. Even stranger, his erection stands in stark contrast to the violence around him. In many ancient cultures, death and eroticism intertwined as part of fertility rites. Could this be intentional, a visual paradox merging destruction and creation? Then there's the bird-headed staff lying nearby, its shape echoing the man's mask. Some scholars argue this isn't a weapon at all, but a ritual object, a shaman's tool for traversing realms. The mask itself resembles those worn by Siberian shamans during spirit flights, where birds symbolized messengers between worlds. Indigenous traditions worldwide describe trance states as little deaths, where the soul temporarily abandons the body. If the falling man represents such a journey, the bison might not be an aggressor but a spirit guide, its wound a portal rather than a mortal blow. The rhinoceros adds another layer. Unlike the dynamic bison, it's passive, almost disinterested. Rhinos rarely feature in Paleolithic art, making its presence here deliberate but cryptic. Some suggest it represents the indifferent force of nature, death as an inevitable, unemotional process. Others note its position near the cave's entrance, as if guarding the threshold between scenes. Most haunting is the painting's location. It's tucked into a remote chamber called the shaft, accessible only by descending a near-vertical 6-meter drop. This wasn't a space for casual visitors. Reaching it required effort and risk, turning the act of viewing into a kind of pilgrimage. The artists might have been encoding a warning that true understanding demands descent, both physical and metaphorical. What lingers isn't just the mystery of the falling man's fate, but why his creators needed him to fall at all. In a cave filled with thriving herds, his solitary vulnerability feels intentional. He's not just a casualty, he's a mirror reflecting the paradox of human existence, our power to wound the mighty bison and our helplessness before forces we can't control. His body isn't just falling, it's asking across 17,000 years if we've ever really landed. From the shamanic visions of France's Sorcerer to the celestial maps of India's cupules, these 25 hidden messages reveal more than just ancient artistry. They expose the intricate ways our ancestors made sense of existence. Each symbol, whether the submerged menagerie of Cosca Cave or the spectral handprints of Altamira, whispers a different truth about the prehistoric world, a world where art wasn't decoration, but a language of survival, spirituality, and connection. The dancing warriors of Gobeston carved rhythm into stone, while the X-ray artists of Kakadu peeled back flesh to reveal the sacred beneath the surface. The rainbow serpent wound through myths and mountains alike, and the falling man of Lascaux tumbled through time, begging us to ask, was his death an accident, a ritual, or a metaphor we've yet to unravel? But as we piece together these puzzles, a deeper question lingers. When we scrutinize a bird-headed figure and call it a shaman, or declare dotted patterns to be lunar calendars, are we truly decoding their world, or projecting our own assumptions onto the past? The line between interpretation and imagination blurs with every discovery. Maybe the white shaman panel isn't a celestial map but a dream transcribed. Perhaps the astronaut of Tassili isn't a visitor from the stars but a dancer mid-ceremony, their costume misread by modern eyes. The beauty of these mysteries lies in their resistance to easy answers. They remind us that the past isn't a static artifact but a conversation, one where we must listen as much as we speculate. So what do you think? Are these caves whispering truths, or are we hearing echoes of ourselves? The walls have kept their secrets for millennia, but the discussion doesn't end here. Share your theories in the comments, and if you're hungry for more journeys into the unknown, don't forget to subscribe. History isn't just a record of what happened. It's an invitation to keep looking closer, to question and to wonder. After all, the next hidden message might be waiting where you least expect it, etched in stone, pulsing with pigment, or flickering just beyond the torchlight.